people, Ping Ping William, Ato in Juba, Malatori, hey, I'm yo, Ping Ping William, Ato in Benti, Walla Quaju, hey, wow, Ping Ping William, Ato in Malkal, Walla Pinyaram, Ping Ping William,
Ben Majuk, you are muted.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Abraham Awolich, for accepting our invitation as Lagos State Media to come and share your thoughts and wisdom with the fellow citizens of South Sudan and the regions, East Africa at large. To our viewers, welcome to Lagos State Media Beyond Boundaries. And in the studio, as you have heard, is Abraham Awolich, the member of PCCA. And Abraham Wolich will be here with us to discuss and have a conversation in regard to the situation happening in Sudan and how will it affect the issue of South Sudan peace implementation. On the same note, he will also highlight the issues of PCCA. They are so silent for a certain period of time now. And many of you have been asking outside there what is happening with the PCCA. What are they doing? He's here today to also to give us and to answer that questions that most of you have been asking. Lastly, wherever you are tuning in, kindly share this live show on your Facebook wall so that it can reach out to many South Sudanese to get information from Abraham Awolich. Abraham Awolich, welcome to Lagos 10 Media once again, and we are really glad for always honoring our invitation. We don't take it for granted, and it is our duty to listen to you and invite you so that you can share your thoughts with the fellow citizens. The floor is yours, Abraham. Give us your opening remark before we dive into our conversation. Thank you.
All right. Well, first of all, Brother Majuk, thank you very much. And I want to appreciate the Lake State media team for continuing to educate our people, keeping them informed, and keeping them interested in the affairs of their country. I think this is a good development, and you should keep it up. And of course, I'm very thankful that I could be here today to share my perspective with you and to update the people of South Sudan who have been longing to hear from us about what the PCCA is doing and what we are up to. Sometimes it is good to assess affairs of the country. And so that is what the PCCA has been doing. We've been studying the trends and the events that are happening in the country. Although we have not spoken, we have been working. We have been working extremely hard to understand the dynamics, the suffering of our people, the economic hardships that people are facing, the slow development of the political processes, the unfolding situation in the Sudan. All of this, we have been studying them silently. And I'm here today to provide some perspective on those developments and to assure our citizens that the PCCA remains committed to the transformation of South Sudan and remains committed to the empowerment of citizens so that citizens can take full charge of the affairs in their country and to begin to hold their leaders accountable and to tell them that the sun that we have been waiting for to rise is actually not rising. It is setting. The sun is setting over South Sudan. And what we expect, if things continue the same way, is darkness, not light. And that is why we are here as an organization to keep hope and alive and to continue to hold up the light that is about to go dim in our country. And so I'm delighted to be here. I want to greet all the citizens of South Sudan, inside South Sudan, outside South Sudan. And I want to convey my heartfelt appreciation to the Lake State Media and all South Sudanese who are committed to this work of media to share information and to enlighten our society. So I look forward to having an honest and open conversation with citizens, and I'm grateful that I would be doing that this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abraham Awolich. Indeed, you said the sun which we have been waiting to rise is no longer rising, rather than setting. It's a powerful statement. And we are glad as the media platform too, to have citizens who are so committed to the affairs of their nation, and also to see the prosperous and peaceful South Sudan in the near future. Thank you so much. It has been a while, Abraham Awolich, seen the members of our country, the South Sudanese, have actually heard from PCCA. And the question has been, what is happening with the PCCA? Where are the PCCA members, rather? And what are they doing? Kindly, can we begin from there, our conversation? What is PCCA doing, and in these periods where South Sudan is at the point of, actually, I don't know how to put it, at a certain point where they are supposed to move forward, and there are things pulling them backward. So what is the work of PCCA, and what have you been doing, despite you have been writing a lot of letters, address them to the president, and even address them to the whole citizen or to the nation in different occasions? I remember, Abraham, many South Sudanese lost hope and faith in reading. They rely heavily on what they will hear from the person live, like the way you have turned up for the invitation to come and share your thoughts with them. As you will give us your perspective and also enlighten the citizens that you are there and you are doing what you are committed to do, you will also enlighten and remind them about the letters that you wrote several months ago and also the last month. Thank you so much, Abraham. The chance is
Thank
yours.
Thank you, Brother Majuk. I think it is a relevant question. We are accountable to the citizens of South Sudan. And so when we are not doing what is necessary, we can be called out. And so we are grateful that the people of South Sudan continue to want to hear from us and been longing to hear from us. The PCCA has been working extremely hard, and it is important for citizens to understand what is happening. First, one of our major commitments in the beginning of last year was to try to prevent the extension of the revitalized peace agreement. We did the best we could to enlighten the citizens and to try to appeal morally to the leadership of South Sudan and to the international community that an extension of the revitalized peace agreement without considering other factors that might have overtaken events in relation to the peace agreement is not good for the country. Unfortunately, we did not succeed. The agreement was extended. And so from our perspective, we had to reconsider and re-strategize what is it that we should be telling citizens, and also give citizens an opportunity to observe and give the government and those who are in the peace agreement and in the article an opportunity to demonstrate their commitment with the renewal of the revitalized, with the extension of the transitional period, whether there will be something new and whether maybe we are trying to frustrate a step that may be good for the country. So we took a step back and give the government and those who are signatories to the peace agreement to show and demonstrate their political will and commitment to the roadmap which they said was the way for South Sudan to get out of crisis. And I can report to our citizens right here that our fears of the extension then and our fears now remain the same. The roadmap is not being implemented in letter and spirit. There is no political will to radically change events within the country. People are still calculating. People are still manipulating, orchestrating, and maneuvering to keep power or to grab power. And there is no empowerment of citizens. Political space remains closed completely. There remain a lot of moral bankruptcy in the country. There is little to no moral authority anymore in South Sudan. And the vision is not clear. We are still swimming in very dark and murky water. And the laws of the country are not being respected as they were. New laws which are needed to transform the country are not being enacted. The making of the constitution remains is not progressing. People are talking very highly about elections, yet there is no electoral law. There is no new constitution, and even the the electoral body has not yet been reconstituted. And so essentially, South Sudan has not made any progress. What has happened is that we have actually walked 5 steps backward from last year. And if you want me to touch on the economic front, despite our appeal to the government and to the citizens to revisit the salaries of civil servants and soldiers, no progress has been made there. The economy remains nervous because there is no confidence in the political process, and therefore there is no investment. So economy has shrunk, it's continuing to shrink. People are losing their jobs, and the salary that was paid to people then has now been cut by 50% in value because the pound has now jumped from $1 that at the time we complained about it, it was 500 to $1, 500 pounds to $1. Right now, it is 1,100 per pound, 1 pound to $1. So really, the economy has deteriorated. The country is a hungry and starving country, and unfortunately, the regional body, which is a IGAD-affiliated meteorological institution, has just forecast that South Sudan and other countries will have no rain this year. So basically, people will not plant and they will not harvest anything at the end of this year. The rain will be patchy, and therefore our people will be starving. We have also noted that the international community has scaled back dramatically on their support to South Sudan, including humanitarian support. And so there is little money coming from the international community into the country. And of course, South Sudan was the mediator of the Sudanese crisis. And as with anything with South Sudan, we have failed miserably, and we have seen for the first time in the history of Sudan, maybe during the Mahdi's time, when Mahdi and Gordon fought in 1885, that was the last time there was ever major violence in Khartoum. Of course, there have been coups here and there, but there has never been an extreme violence in Khartoum and other suburbs in the north as we are witnessing now. So that goes to suggest that our mediators were maneuvering, they were calculating, they were not working to address the Sudanese crisis. It was about trying to consolidate military rule, and it has backfired. And now we have to deal with the influx of the South Sudanese people who are displaced in the north. And so, what I can tell you now is that our country is far worse off than it were when we made a declaration in 2021. And so the PCCA is ever committed and more determined to continue to be the voice of the ordinary people of South Sudan. We will continue to call a spade a spade. We continue to believe that at the center of this crisis, a failure of leadership under President Salva Kiir Mayardit, and you can do whatever you want. You can sign any whatever peace agreement you want to sign. As long as President Kiir remains the president, South Sudan must brace for a sunset, not sunrise. That doesn't mean that the sun will never rise again. It will. But it will be a very long night before it is a day. And the PCCA will sit together in that darkness with the people of South Sudan, continue to light a small light, hold up a small light until the day comes. And so that is my plight to you, that the PCCA is well and alive. We have been studying, we had to step back. I think this is part of being politically disciplined. When major events have occurred and you have tried the best you can to change course and you didn't, you have to step back, re-strategize, reflect, and come back. And so we have done that, and we have concluded our assessment of the situation. And those who have not read the letter that we issued around the 20th of April should revisit that letter. And I would ask Lake State Media to republish that letter and let the people of South Sudan read the dynamics facing our country are threatening. It is possible that South Sudan could cease to exist as a country. It is possible with the current trends. One of the trends is that Sudan is breaking up, and we are seeing that. And when a country is poorly assessed, poorly established, and not established on the truth of the people. Okay, sir. Just 1 second.
It's okay.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Awolich. To our viewers, thank you too for tuning in to listen to Awolich's perspective in regard to the issues of our country, and most especially the issues of Sudan. We are here to provide a platform to each and every South Sudanese to come and share his or her thoughts in regard to the crisis we are in. We truly believe if we continue talking, we'll find a solution. Thank you, Awolich. Welcome back, and pick it up from there. You were talking about the letter which you wrote in the month of April, addressed it to the president with regard to the crisis of Sudan. Thank you.
Right. So we are looking at the situation in the Sudan. We are also reading the international environment. Right now, it is obvious that the West and Russia are at a loggerhead in Ukraine. It is, while it is a Ukrainian conflict, it has international dimensions, and it has created Cold War-like situations, which means that there will be proxy contestations, there will be proxy wars in different parts of the world, and people are realigning. And of course, there is also a developing situation in Southeast Asia between the United States, Taiwan, and China. And many other countries are involved. So the world is entering a very uneasy era. The era of peace from 1990s up to now there is seemingly some disruption that is happening, and small countries like ours, full of natural resources, are going to be victims because there will be contestation about those resources, and who controls those resources will be subject to contestation. And so our message to the president is that given these trends in the international community and given the regional dynamics of the conflict, let us think about it this way. We are saying that the violence that has happened in Sudan is a result of the war in Yemen, a result of the war in Libya, the result of war in Ethiopia, between the Tigray and Ethiopia. Why is that? Because when there is a conflict in the region, it creates certain dynamics. It enables certain environments that were not foreseen, and therefore it creates opportunities for people who want to perpetuate violence to take advantage. The reason South Sudan has not seen major violence so far is that the arms embargo has been very effective. Even though the government goes out and cry and say, I want the arms embargo lifted, the arms embargo has actually worked to the advantage of government. That means that member states surrounding South Sudan are not allowed to give weapons to anyone, including rebels. That's why South Sudan is silent. It is not that there are no rebels, there are. But the arms embargo have been very effective. Now, when you have a major large-scale violence in your neighborhood, the arms embargo are no longer relevant. So, because weapons are coming everywhere, and that creates opportunities for violent groups to begin to assert themselves. So we are worried about that, and that is a direct impact. The second is that we had advised the government in the letter to be very careful about how they are managing the Sudanese situation. Because if they are seen to be siding with one group, the other group will side with those who are opposed to the government, provide them with the opportunities to challenge the government in the theater of war. And they could sabotage the oil pipeline and cut off revenue from the government. And the moment you do that, it's really difficult to survive without revenue. And so, but even after we have issued our letter, they have already mismanaged the situation. They welcome a representative of the RSF to Juba, met with the president in the presidential palace, and held a joint press conference with our foreign minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Deng Dao. And that you don't do that. You don't do that. Even if you are supporting rebels, I don't remember any president in Africa ever holding a press conference, a joint press conference with John Garang. Maybe the only time that has happened was during the CPA, after both parties were now in agreement. John Garang would sneak into any country, do his business behind the scene, and leave. So when our government holds meetings directly with the representative of a party that is seen as opposition, it shows it created an angry reaction and response from the other side. So already the situation is being mismanaged. Our advice was to try to prevent that. And so we are afraid that South Sudan is in a much more vulnerable position right now, given those international dynamics and given the actors that are participating in the Sudanese conflict and the relationship that we have built. And so we think that unless we act now to consolidate our unity as a people, South Sudan is likely to sink deeper into the abyss, and the political crisis that we think are manageable now will become very unmanageable, like the situation in the Sudan. When things get to a certain point, you can manage them. I'm not very optimistic that the Sudanese situation would be resolved anytime soon. It will get worse before it gets any better. And the dynamics have completely changed. It's very difficult to put the genie back to the bottle. And South Sudan is likely to go that route unless leadership is exercised right now, and unless the citizens of South Sudan become more assertive to protect their country, we could lose our country in this process. That is our fear, and that was the basis of our letter. And we have given clearly about 6 to 7 recommendations of what needs to be done. I'm not going to get into all that for now. One of the things that we have recommended is that the country needs to enter dialogue through the roundtable conference. And we are saying that the reason dialogue and roundtable conference are important, we don't need to go and discuss power, because that is what we have been discussing the whole year. But we have not talked about the people and how they live together and how they structure their state and society. That is the one thing that we have always overlooked. And it is always the basis of the disharmony that we are seeing. And so if we are open to each other and we are able to discuss even touchy issues, because there are certain things that are not discussed. For example, a lot of people in our country, a lot of minority groups believe that the Dinkas basically are dominating the political space in the country. Now, when people go to the peace talks, they don't talk about those, because when you talk about those, you appear like you are weak, you are not a nationalist, you want to talk about tribal matters. But the truth of the matter is, what motivates people is tribal itself. And it is a perception that some people are dominating power. That is what drives people to violence. Yet, when you go to the table, you don't talk about those. You talk about, some laws need to be fixed. We need to share power. You need to deal with this. But the elephants remains. And so I think that the roundtable should deal with these matters head on. And that is what we have recommended. So let me stop there. And maybe there are more pointed questions that I can address. But otherwise, that is what the PCCA has been doing. We are now back. We have done our assessment, and we have concluded that there is no promise and there is no hope in the roadmap. It is all a political deception, and it is all leading to the collapse and disintegration of this country. And we will try to do our best to prevent that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abraham Awolich, for your thoughts and answering the questions, of which you actually highlighted some of the things that you documented in the letter that you wrote, open letter you wrote to the president last month, in regard to the situation in Sudan and how South Sudan should handle such situation without being accused. Although South Sudan has already been accused by one party in Sudan for what you have just mentioned, of hosting one of the people whom the government of Sudan seemed to be a rebel in their country, of which it actually raised a serious concern from Sudan government. You have mentioned quite many things in regard to what the PCCA has been doing for the last few months, and your appeal to the government of South Sudan in regard to the roundtable initiative. There is one of your member which was arrested some years back and was released actually this year, Kwela Gurkwel, Honorable. How is he doing? You need also to brief the citizens on his status now, after he has been released from the prison and being set free by the court in our country. Thank you. The chance is yours, Abraham.
Right. Well, thank you very much. With regards to Governor Kwela Gurkwel, Quill remains is in Juba. Is still is not 100% well. He has tried in the month of March. He was transferred to go to the hospital in India, and so he was traveling with his wife. And at the airport, when they arrived to check in, national security confiscated both of their passports and denied them access to travel. And so Quill was prevented from traveling. There was no clarity as to what prompted the state to prevent him from traveling. He has no case standing out there in court. He has no criminal case to answer. He was not even acquitted, because to be acquitted means that the case was tried and you were not found guilty. What happened was the case was entirely dismissed because it has no legal merit to even get into the trial. And so Governor Quill has no case to answer, just like all of us have no case to answer. We are exercising our freedom of speech guaranteed by our Constitution. And we are talking about state matters. And we are not calling for any violence. We are calling, it is a legitimate right of citizens to say that their leaders have failed and they therefore have to go. They have violated the Constitution by failing to conduct elections at the time prescribed by the Constitution. And as such, every citizen has a legitimacy to challenge those who cling to power outside the provisions of the Constitution. And so Quill was prevented. He did not travel, and he's not getting medical attention. His bank account remains frozen. He had traveled to Awolich to try to conduct prayers for his wife who had passed away. And the president called on the governor why Quill was allowed to go there. And so he was restricted. People were not allowed to attend the funeral of his wife. And those who were to attend the funeral were warned that there will be consequences for that. And if you remember, when General Salva Mathok died and his body was brought overseas for burial, Governor Quill went to the airport to receive the body of Salva Mathok. And in that process, the president also went and they met at the airport. And the president, goes around greeting people. When he came to Quill, he refused to greet him and verbally told him that you guys have been challenging me because I don't shoot people, but I'm going to start shooting people. And so that was an interaction. And Quill said, yeah, you can shoot me today, tomorrow you get shot. And so Quill remains unsafe in Juba. The government and the president was asked. Somebody prominent went to the president and said, why was Quill prevented from traveling to seek medical attention? And the president said why he didn't take permission from the SPLM. There is no provision, there is no law. There is no law in our country that says if you want, first of all, Quill is not a government official now, he doesn't hold a government position. So he is a free citizen, he can travel anywhere. And there is no provision that says you have to seek permission from your party. No one should seek permission from anyone. A citizen should be free to travel. It is part of our Constitution, freedom of movement. So now Quill tried to establish that why the SPLM would require him to seek permission, and the SPLM people are saying, we have no idea. There is nothing that requires you to take permission from us. So technically, the summary is that the president remains bitter against Quill, and he wants to make his life miserable. So Quill's life is miserable in Juba. Quill is not doing well. He's not getting the financial resources he needs to keep himself treated. He's not allowed to travel. He's not allowed to freely interact with people. The government continued to threaten people from interacting with him, and his movement remains monitored. He's tapped. His communication system is tapped. And so essentially Quill is still living in a hell, even though he has been released by the court. And it is obvious that it is the president who remains bitter against him. And that is a violation of the law. Somebody set free by the court is totally free. Should not his life should not be constrained. But otherwise, Governor Kwe remains in a high spirit. He remains committed to the cause, and he stands for freedom of citizens and the right of citizens to transform their country into a democratic country. So that is what I can say right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abraham Awolich, for also briefing citizens in regard to the status of Governor Kwela Gurkwel. We'll move to our second, almost the last questions, second last, or even the third one rather. Back to the issues of Sudan. You mentioned earlier South Sudan, for it to be relevant in mediation of Sudan peace, then South Sudan must play a neutral role in that peace, in that peace initiative rather. Now, can you tell us, Abraham, South Sudan at first, President Kiir was delegated by the IGAD, together with the Kenya president and Eritrea, to address the issue of Sudan. And President Kiir was assigned to be the lead of the team. After 2 weeks, the Sudan actually were seen moving toward Saudi Arabia in order to address the issues. At last, we saw President Kiir hosting and welcoming the two parties to Juba. Kindly, can you tell us how legitimate South Sudan is in this critical situation of Sudan? That's one. Number two, how will crisis in Sudan really affect the issue of peace implementation in Juba? I remember the peace has been implemented in a slow phase without crisis from any neighboring state. Now we have crisis from Sudan, not just any neighboring state, but in Sudan. And Sudan is where the economy of South Sudan always get a fresh air from. Now crisis in Sudan. Do you believe South Sudan will fully implement the security arrangements on time? Or will we go for elections next year, considering the challenges surrounding the agreement now, including the hyperinflations in Juba, where $100 is 100,000 South Sudanese pound, which is an unprecedented situation. Thank you, Abraham.
Thank you very much, Brother Majuk, for that question. First, if people want to be honest, South Sudan really has a hand in the collapse of Sudan. We have been mediating since the uprising in 2019. South Sudan has been mediating the peace, and there was a shared government between the civilians and the military in the Sudan. But in October 2021, the military leaders arrested the civilian government and they took over. And South Sudan supported the takeover by the military, undermining the civilian rule. So that is one. And so we are saying, so I'm saying that we negotiated a bad peace for the people of Sudan. And so it is that bad peace which was built around strong leadership, military leadership, around Imeti and Al-Burhan, undermining the popular will and uprising of the people of Sudan who managed to overthrow Bashir. This is what has led to the crisis in the Sudan. And so we should be ashamed of ourselves as a country that we didn't help our neighbors. Now, Abdulaziz al-Hillo, Adam al-Hillo, who had reservations about this peace, is now been exonerated. He had a point. So that is one. Number two, Juba actually explicitly has supported the coup in October 2021. Of course, I don't have evidence, but I was told that we actually sent in some military officers into Khartoum to go and help the military leaders stabilize the situation. And so really, South Sudan has no legitimacy to be a mediator in this conflict, because the ones they had negotiated is the one that has led to the collapse of Sudan. So really, it's we should be honest with ourselves and say we can't do this, and we should not pretend to do it. Let Saudi Arabia and the United States and others deal with it. But that doesn't mean that we are not actors. We are actually number one stakeholder in the crisis in the Sudan. We should be worried about it. We should be thinking about it. We should be strategizing about it, because it will affect us more directly than any other country next to Sudan. And so, I don't think we have any legitimacy to pursue the mediation. We have lost that credibility. We did not side with the people of Sudan. We sided with the dictators and the military leaders, because that's what we have in the South. And so, and we have failed the people of Sudan. We really have no reason to want to continue to mediate if we are honest with ourselves. What we should focus on is, how do we protect our country from the spillover of the violence in the Sudan into our affairs? And of course, it is a regional conflict. So it is started in Yemen, where it started in Libya, then Yemen, and went to Ethiopia. Now it is Sudan. South Sudan actually is the next one in line, and we cannot avoid this conflict. And so we should really come back home, focus on our internal affairs, and monitor the situation at the border with Sudan, distance ourselves from supporting any of the parties, and help the people of Sudan, the ordinary citizens of Sudan, to recover their country, which is seemingly slipping away in their hands right now, because there are international vultures that have come in, and they will divide and basically dismember the country. So, because as we speak right now, Sudan is now a very weak state, so anything could happen. And so that is my view on that. We should not mediate the conflict in Sudan. We are partisan. Now, how that will affect the implementation of the peace agreement in South Sudan? Obviously, it is. I really don't think it is a good question for me, because I don't believe there is any peace agreement to be implemented in South Sudan. It is a joke. It is a charade. It is a political deception. There is no peace. Sudan was the guarantor, but they didn't do much. Uganda has also stepped back. And so technically it is a peace agreement. One member of our South Sudanese community in Juba, we were debating about how Angelina was removed from her position in violation of the peace agreement. And now the IO was powerless to do anything. And he wrote to me and said, your problem is that you believe there was a peace agreement, but we all know that there was no peace agreement. It was a negotiated surrender. It was a negotiated surrender by the IO and the other political parties. And so don't believe in the that there is a peace agreement. We had a negotiated surrender, and the IO has surrendered with the other oppositions, and therefore they have no choice but to follow whatever the president has decided to do. And so we should not continue to think that there is a peace agreement. It is a negotiated surrender, and we should not continue to wait for its implementation. It has been 2018. Citizens of South Sudan, we need to be serious. This agreement was signed in 2018. What year is this? This is 2023. It's been 5 years and it's not making progress. So how you continue to believe that there is something to be implemented remains a puzzle to me. But we need to give up on this agreement and ask the government and the parties that are party to it to open up the political space and let the people of South Sudan dialogue so that we can arrive at legitimate peace. That's what I can say. Thank you very much. And of course, the the economic situation in Sudan, in South Sudan, will be worsened by the situation in the Sudan, and an economic collapse is inevitable in South Sudan unless we take serious measures to fix the situation, the political situation. The economy doesn't come to life until the political side of it comes to life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Awolich. And a follow-up question regarding about the issues, crisis in Sudan. Sudan is going into 2 months since the war break out in Khartoum, and that separate across the city, nearby cities. So when you see the crisis in humanitarians, we have 1.5 or more million people staying in Khartoum, South Sudanese, and some of them are stuck. And I see some of the citizens are doing fundraising to send in truck, airplane to ship, to bring those citizens who are stuck in the war zone in Khartoum, bring them back to South Sudan. So what do you think as a PCCA civil society, what do you think South Sudan government will be doing more to bring our citizens out from the war zone like the rest of the country did when the war broke out in Khartoum last month?
Well, that is a very good question, Abraham Medit. I think the responsibility of any country and any government is to protect its citizens against all matters that are harmful to them, whether it's war, whether it is hunger, or whether it is a natural disaster. It is a responsibility of government to prove worthy of its citizens. And so what I believe is that South Sudan should spend every resource it has to get our people out of Sudan, and not only get them out, but also to settle them, make sure that they are, when they come home, they have something to settle on, shelter and food and security. I think any citizen which is in trouble and the government comes to its rescue, that is the only time in this life of that citizen to understand that the government exists for a reason. The government may not show up in your life every day, but when you are in real danger, the government will show up. So I think that the government is limited in terms of resources that it has, but every little resource we have, including military resources, should be deployed to rescue our people. There is no reason why military trucks cannot be mobilized to go to the border and drive our people. There is no reason why we cannot deploy the barges in the river to get our people from Reng, put them on the barges, take some to Malakal, take some to Bors, take some to all the other places. And on the other side, I think if there are military tools and equipment, they should be deployed to get the citizens out. You cannot really airlift that big population, and that is a joke, and it is a waste of time and resources. We really need to get barges in the river, and also trucks, the military trucks, and any truck available. And we need to communicate effectively to our citizens that they don't need to wait. The situation in the Sudan will not get any better anytime soon. So we really, and I don't see any reason why they should all be brought to Juba. Juba is unable to feed all those who are there. People are starving in Juba. So you bring all the citizens in Juba, you are actually bringing crisis. And so really, we really need to think deeply and prepare and plan. But the most immediate thing now, get our people out of harm's way and put them under some protection and giving them the assurance of security and services, so that they are getting out of their to get out of Khartoum. Uh, and if once we have done that, then now we can go back and try to help the Sudanese people. But for now, we really need to respond to the plight of our citizens. And it is also important for ordinary citizens like you, Abraham, and I. If we have the will and the resources, we can also mobilize privately to help our own citizens, to help do the little bit we can. But our capacity is limited compared to the government. Government has more capacity, has more resources to be able to do a much bigger intervention. Thank you.
Thank you. My next question, we have two more questions, and then then I will pull up a question from the audience who are watching Facebook and YouTube and Clubhouse. As you know, Abraham, since 1956, when Sudan got independent from British, Sudan has been in war, and the war was fought in South Sudan, which is the Republic of South Sudan now. And nobody know, you and I, nobody know that there would be a war in Khartoum, which happened. So people are shocked when they see the war. People are fighting on the street of Khartoum. South Sudanese are shocked. Northern Sudanese are shocked about that. And the international community are shocked. My question is to you, do you think Sudan will break into two or into many, 3 or 4 small countries? So because you see now like Nuba Mountain, Blue Nile, Darfur. So those people there are the leaders there say that they want, when the war starts in Khartoum, they want to break away. There are the leaders that say that, okay, we need to have our own government. So they are not organized anymore to associate themselves with Khartoum government. They want to organize themselves to have that small government. Do you think Sudan is changing and will break into small countries? What do you think about that? And you also talk about this about the API issues too.
Well, thank you very much, Abraham. I think it is a very good question. I'm not an expert on Sudan at all, but what I can say is that 30 years of President Bashir's rule has ruined Sudan. The reason Sudan fighting has never taken place in Khartoum is because the Sudanese army is a professional army. They are a strong, unified, professional army. And when you have a strong, unified, professional army, it protects the nation. And this is the case also with the Kenyan army. That's why you don't see any conflict happening in Kenya. They have a very strong, unified national army. So even when political leaders disagree, the army will sit there, and if they see that the political leaders are not making any progress, they will intervene. What President Bashir did, because he felt that the Sudanese army is strong and could pose a threat against him, he started to create these militias, the Popular Defense Force, the Rapid Defense Force, the National Security, instrumentalizing the national security to supersede the national army. And so over time, the institution of the National Army has been weakened. And so when President Bashir left power, and something else has happened, the Sudanese politics has always been organized around religious sect. So the line of Mergani and the line of Al-Mahdi. Now, these traditional power holders in the Sudan were also destroyed and undermined by both President Bashir and Hassan al-Trabi. And so really the elements that were important in holding the Sudanese state together have been weakened over the 30 years of dictatorship under President Bashir. And so when he was no longer in power, it was no longer clear where the center of power is. And of course, because of that, he has built a parallel army, which is now the Rapid Response Force, which grew stronger and stronger as a result of the war in Yemen and also as a result of the war in Libya. And I'm not getting into the details of why that is the case. But Mehdi has been sending troops to Yemen, and he got paid by the Saudis and Emiratis as a result of that. And also he has been doing something in southern Libya to prevent migrants, and I'm sure he has gotten some money through Europeans who were concerned about influx of migrants through the Libyan, because the government in Libya collapsed. So people were using Libya as a gateway to get into Europe. So this guy was also given some money to police the Sahara and make sure that people are not entering Libya. And so he gained some power, and now he's challenging the Sudanese army, and the traditional power centers of Sudan have been weakened, and so they can no longer withstand. And so your question in that context is now important. Will Sudan break up? It is possible. It is possible that Darfur could go its own way. Maybe South Kordofan and Blue Nile could go their own way. And of course, Eastern Sudan, the Bija people, they have been fighting. Bija Congress and other movements, the Free Lion movement, which is also based in the Red Sea, they have been active and they could also break away. So it is possible Sudan could break up into 4 more countries. It is also possible that that could be prevented. People can come back to their senses and reach a true and legitimate foundation. Maybe what I could also add is that Sudan was not established on a strong basis. It was established on biased and it was established as a country dominated by a specific group of people. And because of that, people have sentiments. They are very bitter about more than 60 years of marginalization. And that is what you are seeing now playing out. It is the people who have been marginalized that have stormed Khartoum, and they are destroying Khartoum because they don't identify with Khartoum. They felt that Khartoum has dominated politics, dominated economy, dominated the military power at their expense. And in fact, they have been the one fighting the wars in the south, especially the Darfuris and the people in the southern regions. They were the ones in the army fighting against the south, but the benefits have gone to the people in the north and the people around the riverines, the Nile River, the riverine Arabs. And so it is a crisis that is rooted in how Sudan was established as a country of the Arabs, marginalizing all the Africans and others. And that is why we broke away in the south. And that is what led to the conflict in Darfur. That is what led to the situation of the 2 areas of Blue Nile and South Kordofan. And never to forget the Eastern Sudan and the Bija people in the Red Sea. these groups felt that they are not considered part of the power structure in the Sudan, and now they are the ones bringing the war to Khartoum. They are the ones bringing the war to Khartoum. And so you are absolutely right. Sudan could break up. It is a high possibility, but there is also a chance that maybe they can reach a legitimate dialogue, legitimate agreement to now reestablish the Sudanese state that that is fair and that accommodate all its citizens and that treat them equal. If they can do that and give each other the assurance of doing that, then there is no need to break up. But if there is resistance, if people are resisting to do that, there is a highly likelihood that Sudan could break up into those many small countries.
Thank you, Abraham. My follow-up question: what advice can you give to South Sudan government regarding of crisis going on in Khartoum? Do you think South Sudan government can take a side on this, because they already be accused? Amity, Brown accused them that the South Sudan government is supporting Amity. What advice do you give to the government of Juba? Do you think they would take a side, or they remain neutral on this conflict? Because regardless whether they like it or not, South Sudan government would be dragged into this war sooner or later because of the oil, because the pipeline running from Khartoum. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, my inclination is that we should never take side in other countries' affairs. I think that is not a good idea. Let the citizens of Sudan make their own decisions. We should always support the ordinary citizens of Sudan or any other country, and we should never side with the most powerful. So the best South Sudan could do is, if they are unable to mediate, and I don't think they are credible to mediate because of the relationships that have been built. I was part of the system, and I understand that there are so deep relationships that have been built between MAT and a number of high senior profile government officials, including Tutkel himself. So definitely there are more people who are closer to Tutkel, to MAT than to Al Burhan. And so there is a bias in that direction. But there are also people who are smart, who are saying that we should stand with the Sudanese army. They are the status quo. They are the establishment, and if they are defeated, then Sudan will go into disarray. So there are elements in the country on that. But what happened a week ago, when this representative of MAT came to Juba and was allowed to meet with the president and hold a joint press conference in the president's office, I think that was a mistake. I think that was a political blunder. I think that is a political naivety. It's a mismanagement of international affairs. South Sudan should not have done that. There is nothing wrong. They could meet with the representative of MAT, but those things are done behind the closed doors. It is never the right thing. And obviously, we need to get things clear. Who is the opposition in the Sudan and who is the government? Hemeti was a deputy of Al Burhan. So Al Burhan remains the head of Sudanese state. And Hemeti is the opposition, just like the way it was, when Dr. Riek Machar rebelled against President Kiir remains the head of state, and Riek Machar was considered the opposition. That is how it is. When you are given power, you have the legitimate authority. Even though your own citizens question your legitimacy, the rest of the world will continue to consider you as the head of that state. Otherwise, if you are not considered the head of that state, you are basically throwing the country into a crisis. So in this case, Al Burhan is the head of Sudanese state, although in a much weaker position right now, and MAT is the opposition. We should get that clear. And so when you are dealing with Hemeti, even if you are supporting him, know that you are dealing with an opposition. And you are dealing with Al Burhan, even though he's weak, he remains the legitimate head of Sudanese state until he is deposed, until he is overthrown. And whoever takes over in Sudan will have relationship with South Sudan, which is why it is important for us to be neutral, because we will never get rid of the Sudanese people. The governments will come and go, but we will need to continue to remain friends and having a relationship with the Sudanese people. That cannot change, and it will never change. And so my advice to the government is that they need to apologize to Al Burhan, and they need to continue to meet with both sides. I think that is important. It is unfair for Al Burhan to think that Sudanese should not meet with people of MIT. They should not just be treated like a representative of state, but we need to meet with them so that we understand the dynamics, so that we can play a fair role as a neutral neighbor. That is my advice. You are muted, Abraham.
Thank you, Abraham, for your advice to the government of Juba, of the will listening. You know, my next question, because I keep coming up with questions regarding on your responding to the question. You know, as you see, I follow up some of the media outlet, international media outlet, and I see some opinion out there. They think that people are saying the war in Khartoum, the world power are behind it. They mention United States behind it, Russia are behind it. Do you think, in your opinion, do you think the world power are behind the war going on in Khartoum, in Sudan?
Yes. Yes, I think, well, let us get certain things straight. Yes. Part of our letter to the president was exactly about this, that the war in Sudan is no longer about the Sudanese people. It has taken international dimension. And the reason is simple. The world is divided now. The world powers are fighting. Whether we like it or not, the power is unequal in this world. United States has a lot of power. Some countries like China and Russia have a lot of power, military and economic. And when they are fighting, the world has to choose. You have to side with one or the other. And they will have to compete for influence. And so Sudan, because Sudan sits in a strategic location next to Saudi Arabia, next to Egypt, and closer to Israel, and is on the Red Sea, which is a gateway of the oil of the Saudis oil and the oil of the Arab countries going into the rest of the world passes through the Red Sea, going through Yemen and Djibouti all the way to the rest of the world. And so there is competition, obviously, who controls that area. And so the big powers may not have been initially behind it, but definitely they will take sides because of the events happening in Ukraine, and obviously the tensions between Taiwan and China. Those things are part of the equation now, which is why it is important to prevent war, because once war is out there, you cannot control the players. You really don't have power to control the players. So now that is one side, that is the big side. So the US and Russia obviously want to control that area. Russia was trying to establish a naval base in the Red Sea in Port Sudan. America doesn't like that, obviously, and would not want to entertain that. So whoever is in charge of Sudan has to be somebody that they can trust and that will not allow Russia to establish the base. On the other hand, Russia would want to establish that base to control and monitor some of its activities, and would want somebody in power in Sudan who support them. So that is one dimension. The other dimension is you have Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Emirates. They are also divided there. It looks like the Saudis and the Emiratis are supporting Hemeti, and of course, President Sisi and Egypt are supporting Al Burhan. So there is also an Arab dimension here, and you really don't know the where because Iran compete with Saudi Arabia for influence in the Middle East. You don't know where Iran is playing there in the dark. And so those are some of the dynamics that you can see. And then you have Egypt here, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. They are also players in what is going on in the Sudan. Egypt, of course, wants somebody in power in Sudan that will continue to support the rights of Egypt to water. And Ethiopia has challenged Egypt by building a dam. And so they also want somebody in power in Khartoum who will side with those people who say the other countries also have a right to use the Nile water for development. And South Sudan here, whether they like it or not, they are part of the equation because whoever is in Sudan will affect events in South Sudan. We know that we have our opposition leaders. They live in Khartoum. Those of Lamakol, those of Johnson Olony was in Khartoum. He just came back, and Gadwich Dwali is there. And there are other oppositions that live in the Sudanese state, including Dr. Riek Machar himself. He used to live there. So Sudan has a hand in the affairs of South Sudan, and so South Sudan also is interested. So there are so many players here. And those players are pursuing different political, military, and economic interests, and they will continue to provide the fuel and the money and the guns to support their sides. And that is the basis of our worry, that South Sudan could become a victim of that conflict.
Thank you. Do you think, as you mentioned, that the world power are behind of this war going on in Khartoum? Do you think Sudan will slide into civil war?
Well, I think Sudan is already in a civil war, so we should not. It is no longer a coup. You talking, Abraham? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. My network is frozen on me.
Oh, okay. I was just saying that Sudan is already in a civil war right now. If it was a coup, it would have been done already. So if there was a coup, it has failed and it has now become a civil war. So we should really begin to consider it a civil war. It has gone for a month now, and it is not, and there is no sign of it ceasing. And violence has spread across the towns. So technically, Sudan is in a civil war right now, and it will continue to be in a civil war until something meaningful is achieved. So I have no reason to believe that that violence is going to come to an end very soon. I don't think so. So we need to brace for a long-term crisis in the Sudan, and we need to fix our house, which has a lot of places that are leaking already before the heavy rain and the flooding from the Sudan comes in.
Yeah, as you know, like Ameti, not Ameti, Al-Bran, is a hit of IGAD. So he was like, and he's playing a huge role on South Sudan peace agreement. And now Al-Bran have his own crisis on his hand. My question to you, do you think the ARCES peace agreement, and you see that the government, I know one of my colleagues asked you this question before, and the peace agreement, like the country, South Sudan is going to election next year, 2024. Do you think the election of South Sudan will take place in 2024 regarding about crisis going on in Sudan?
Right. Well, first of all, I don't believe that there is RRCs. It is dead. What we have now is a political deception. There is nothing. And so that's why in the opening statement, I told the people of South Sudan that if they are waiting for the sunrise, uh, I have a bad news. There will not be sunrise in South Sudan this year or next year. What we have to wait is a sunset and a long night, because of the way we have mismanaged the peace agreement is not being implemented, and the unity of people is not a priority. It's a political power and scheming that the leaders are doing. So in that regard, with or without Al Buran, the peace agreement was already dead because of the political will, lack of political will on our leaders. Number two, there is a lot of talk about elections in South Sudan next year. This is the biggest political lie in the history of our country. There is no space. There is no basis for an election in South Sudan. We have no law. We have no. The political space is not open. We have no peace. The economy is in shambles. The parties to the agreement have no trust among each other. Country has no money. The population remains in Uganda and in Kenya and in Sudan. There is no census. So the things that you need to do to have an election are not done. So because of this political deception, the SPLM has been going around the countryside telling people that they should prepare for an election. No other party is allowed to go out there and tell people that there is going to be an election. There is only one party that is campaigning, that is telling citizens that there will be election. There would be no basis for an election in South Sudan. So I think that instead of all these political schemes, all these political lies and fraud, the leaders of South Sudan need to be honest. They need to enter dialogue and create the conditions that are necessary for elections, and go to elect for elections when the country is ready. What is the objective of an election? The objective of an election is to close one political chapter and open up another. We have not closed any political chapter here. The peace agreement has not been implemented. We have not experienced peace, which is why the economy remains nervous. Nobody is investing in the country. Citizens are leaving. They are not coming into the country. Yeah, so really, there is no, we really don't need to deceive our people. We don't think that there will be any election. In the end, what they will do, they will come back. They will, first of all, agree that they will extend, but then they will go on the podium to blame each other, that this other party has not done this and the other party has not done that. And because of that, we will come up with the roadmap number 2 or whatever. They will give it another name. We have already told our citizens that this is a ploy. These people will keep power as long as they can, until somebody tells them that they can no longer have it. And so I think there is no election. We should not deceive ourselves. The peace agreement has already collapsed. It is for a peace agreement, for something to be called an agreement. It's like you, Abraham, and I. You know, if we agree to do something, we must have equal power, such that if I violate that agreement, you will take action that will affect me because I have violated what we have agreed. It's like marriage. You know, if one party wants to do something, the other party has some power, including the power of walking away from the relationship. In this agreement, there is only one party and one individual who has power to do something, and it affects everybody else. The other parties can do nothing that affects the other party. And therefore, there is no agreement. There is some understanding that this guy is the only guy who has power, and we will listen to him. And that is what we have. And so we should not continue to call it an agreement. It is it is a document that only exists on paper, but the substance of it is dead. The spirit, the letter are dead. That's why we have been calling it a dead agreement. And so that doesn't mean that it is bad. It is a bad document. No, it is not. The document was good, but the intent, what was intended to be achieved with this agreement has been forgotten. We are simply just walking around the forest with it, but the original objective is, and the original spirit is dead. So people of South Sudan need to know that there is no election coming. Like we told them that there will be no election, the agreement will be extended. That is what has happened. We didn't say it just because we were against the government. We said it because we knew, we have evaluated the objective reality of that agreement, and we concluded ahead of time that this is what will happen. They will extend the peace agreement. Now we are saying the same thing now. We have been proven right before, and we think that we will be proven right again. We are telling our citizens that forget about this deception, being deceived that you should prepare for an election. There will be no election. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abraham. You know, as PLM party, they will be arguing that no, we are not the only party that doing campaign on the ground. As PLIO, they registered all the state, all 10 states, and they even have their own their own office. Do you think that PLIO have a voice to mobilizing, register their member, or to do the campaign to all 10 state plus 3 administration? What do you think about that?
The results are already in. In northern Barghazal, the IO leaders tried to organize a campaign. They were prevented. In Lake State, the commissioner of IO was put under arrest. I don't know if he's been released now. And they were frustrated, trying to hold a rally and mobilize their citizens. They were prevented. This has been replicated everywhere. So yes, they have opened political offices with some difficulties, but they are not allowed to have rallies. They are prevented.
But
Dr. Riek Machar himself is not free to go and campaign.
So Abraham, if 2024 is not election not taking place in 2024, so what will be the next move for the civil society like yourself and other civil society inside the country and the citizen of South Sudan? You know, as you know before, your group, your organization is calling for uprising for the citizen to go on the street. That was your campaign a couple of years ago. But you see what happened in Khartoum. The issues in Khartoum started with mobilizing, uprising. The citizen went, they overthrow the former president Umar al-Bashir, and then the military took power. And you see between a Brown and a Meti. Now they're fighting each other, and they were the one who behind the uprising, and they support civilian to go on the street and overthrow the Omar Bashir. So now 2024 is coming. It's like 6 months away from now. And if the election, the government and IO and the other party, OPP, they come together, they say, okay, they, as you mentioned before, that they will come up with the different names. It will not be another extension for another 24 months. So what will be the next move for the citizen of South Sudan? What will they do if then another extension comes in 2024? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That is a very good question. For the record, I want to state here that the PCCA remains committed to the principle of non-violent political action by citizens. Whether you want to call that a popular uprising or whatever action the citizens can take to hold the government accountable, we remain committed to that. That is our goal. That is our objective. We think that any political program that is built not on the power of citizens, it doesn't matter how long it takes, it will collapse. So that is one thing that I want to say. PCCA remains committed to agitate the citizens of South Sudan to rise up and to challenge the government, because the government has failed and there are a few individuals that have captured the state power, not by through the constitution, by through violent means. And so they are no longer. We have lost control of our power as a people. We have lost control of our state. We have lost control of our government, and we have lost control of our resources. They have been hijacked and captured by a few individuals. We don't believe in violence, so because the other option is we could rise up, take arms, and fight. We don't like that. But we think that if millions of our citizens come together and say we have had enough of this game, we want to end it, they should. So we will continue to advise our citizens to do that. We will continue to call for people to rise up and to take matters into their own hands. So that is one. Number two, I want also to set the record straight that the reason Sudan collapsed is not because people have risen up, is not because people went to the streets and overthrow President Bashir. The reason Sudan collapsed is the failure of leadership under President Bashir. He killed state institutions so that he himself becomes the state. And so when he is no longer there is no state, because one person became the state. And so the reason Sudan collapsed is because Bashir is gone, and Sudanese people could not stay forever with a dictator who was not opening up progress for the Sudan. So I don't want us to think that it is because people have risen up, that's why Sudanese state collapsed. It is because the leaders who run and manage Sudanese affairs for so many years failed to establish a strong state. They instead build personalities. This is the fear we have in South Sudan, that more and more our country is becoming Salva Kiir. And so that when Salva Kiir is no longer there, there will be no South Sudan. This is what we are trying to prevent as members of the PCCA. This is what we are telling the people of South Sudan, that we should never allow a situation where our state and government become synonymous with an individual. The moment you do that, you lose control of your affairs. And a person becomes the institution. And when that person is gone, whether they died or they are overthrown, you have nothing to hold on because state institutions have been demolished. For example, let me give you an example. The SPLA. The SPLA fought to liberate this country. But the SPLA was repurposed by President Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar. It's no longer that army that came from the bush fighting to liberate South Sudan. They have been repurposed. They have been reformed and reshaped to protect individuals, not the state, not the institutions, not the citizens, not the constitution. And so when President Kiir and Riek Machar fought in 2013, the SPLA split. Everybody went with their man, with their tribal man. So as soon as that happens, you have lost the state. And so this is what we are saying, that the Sudanese state failed because of their leaders. And citizens try to capture their own power back, and I commend the people of Sudan for doing that. Then, because the Sudanese army, which was a nationalist institution, has been destroyed over the years by al-Bashir, the men who took power, the men who were in the army are not loyal to the Sudanese state. They have been repurposed by Bashir. That's why they captured state power from citizens. Every coup in the Sudan has always resulted in an election. The coup of 1964, the coup of 1969, and the coup of 1985, they have all led to elections because the civilian government was quickly restored. But the one in Khartoum recently failed because the army staged a coup against citizens. You don't need to miss that. There was a coup in Khartoum in October 2021, which overthrew the civilian government and the military took over. And so therefore, the revolution which hosted Bashir was overthrown by the military leaders. And so therefore, Sudan now collapsed under the military leaders, not under the revolutionaries. If the revolutionaries were still in power, Sudan would not collapse. And so I don't want you and anyone else in the media to put out this idea that it is because the Sudanese have staged a revolution, that's why their country collapsed. No. It is because the leaders that they overthrew, first of all, destroyed the state, and then the remnants of the state came and overthrew the civilian revolutionary forces, and they took over and they went and fought over the power, and that's why the Sudanese state has collapsed. So we don't want to scare the citizens of South Sudan to believe that if they took matters into their own hands and overthrow Salva Kiir, who has become a dictator, that their country will collapse as a result of their action. I think that is wrong. What will make South Sudan collapse is the failure of President Kiir and his leadership and his government. That is what will kill South Sudan in the long run. What will save South Sudan, however, is if the ordinary people of South Sudan come together through dialogue, negotiate a new transition that will lead to elections that exclude Salva Kiir and Riek Machar and others, and reestablish a South Sudanese state that treats its citizens equal. As soon as we do that, the foundation of this country will be strong and can never be destroyed. But if we insist on building these individuals and feeding the monster of a dictator that we have seen now in our country, the collapse of Sudan will be better compared to ours. We will collapse and we will go our own ways. And South Sudan will cease to exist. So it is better we stop that thing right now before it happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Usas Abraham Awolich. My last question, so we are coming to the end. My last question, a couple months ago, the non-signature, or the SOMA, they call it now, it is non-signature. They went to Rome a couple months ago. They meet with the government for the peace negotiation. But the second round should supposed to be this month, May 15, if I'm right, if I'm correct on the date. They should go back, return back to Rome on the 15th of this month. But that didn't happen. They didn't go there. I don't know what happened. We didn't see anything in the news or any release from either side. So my question to you is, the Rome peace talk, is your PCCA is a part of Rome peace talk through roundtable discussion?
Well, yes, we are not part of the non-signatories, but we are part of what we call the National Consensus Forum, which include the non-signatories. And so, yes, you probably may need to bring on board either Pagana Mum or Thomas Shirillo or Emmanuel Ajawin, who are directly involved in this process, to answer your question. And maybe also look for another.
We reach out. They don't. They think that legislative media is the government media. They don't come to legislative media. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, then that is their mistake. Even SSBC, if they want to interview me, I will talk to them. because you have to continue to talk. So what I can say is that we support the roundtable conference, and the non-signatories support the roundtable conference, and all members of the National Consensus Forum support the roundtable conference. And so in the last round, I was briefed that the non-signatories tabled the issue of the roundtable, and the government said they need time to go and consult, and then they will come back on the 8th of May. So the mediators then told the government team to go and consult and bring back their feedback on the 8th of May. They also told the non-signatories to come and define and give written statement on what is the roundtable conference, what do they want to achieve with it, and that all the parties will return on the 8th. Now, before the 8th, the government has notified the mediators that they will not be in a position to come back. We have not been told what the real issue is, why they are not coming back, but we know it is obvious why they are not coming back. They obviously don't see any reason to continue to negotiate with these groups, because they don't have guns and they are not threatening. But they just wanted to be polite, to respect the request of Pope. But I don't think there is any genuine commitment on the side of government to this roundtable. Yeah, so the ball is on the court of government. They have not notified the mediator as to when they want to come back, but we know that the non-signatories are ready to go back to Rome when they are invited back by Senator Gideon. So the reason the meeting didn't go is because the government had asked for extension, and that they will notify the mediators when they are ready to come back.
Thank you very much, Ustad Abraham Awolich. That is the last interview, but before I let you go, we always give a 1 or 2 minute to our audience who are watching Clubhouse and Facebook and YouTube to ask their question. So I will pull up 1 or 2 questions on the comment side section so that you can answer. So one question is coming from Reddit Qualding. He asked Abraham Awolich whether they will bring a change to supper society of South Sudanese while they are sitting in diaspora. How Dr. Sunday John called some of them a part-time opposition. Go ahead, answer that question.
Yeah, I want to say that is a very common excuse. When I opened up my comments earlier in this interview, I talk about the situation of Governor Kwela Agwere. Kwel is there in Juba. He's not given any space. He's being threatened and harassed on daily basis. He's there in Juba. He wants to bring change. He's not being allowed to bring change. Me too. I was in Juba. I have worked for the president, supported him, tried to help him bring change to the country. I could say, I was one of the people who brainchild the national dialogue as an attempt to fix the affairs of the country. When we issued the PCCA declaration, we were in Juba. We called the media in Juba, and we issued the press conference right there in Juba. And the next thing we knew was that we were being pursued. They want to kill us or they want to arrest us. So for that citizen who may ask that type of a question, it is okay just to come out and say, we don't like you, we support the government, and that is fine, because that is what we are citizens. We have a right to choose and support whatever we want to support. But you cannot question the intention of people who want to bring change to South Sudan. It is not my fault that I have to leave South Sudan. I don't want to be silent. Now, the fact that I'm sitting here now, I'm able to speak, is because I'm outside. You must fight your fight using all the tools in your power, including being able to leave the country and continue to be a voice. Since Kwelagur was released, have you heard him speak here? Why? Because he's not allowed to speak. He was released, and the day he was released, he spoke very bravely and eloquently, but he has not spoken now. Why? Is it because he doesn't speak? Or is he afraid? No, he's being threatened, and he's not being allowed to speak. And so is that the kind of opposition you want us to be? People who just go to Juba and be quiet? How do you know we are opposition if we are in Juba and we are not allowed to speak? Do you know how many opposition leaders are in Juba and they are not able to speak? Because they are threatened. So you need to wake up and stop asking those type of nonsensical questions. You can support the government, that's fine, but you cannot question those who are challenging the government under very hard circumstances. We have no freedom in South Sudan, so people have to speak outside, and that is what we are going to do, and we will continue to speak, and we will continue to reveal the truth until people like you understand it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abraham. The next question is coming from in Clubhouse. Rose is asking you that what are the smart politician moves of South Sudan leaders to move the country forward at this critical moment in the history of Sudan? And the next question, the last in the comment section, which you can answer those two of them, from Albino Noon, is asking, is PCCA give up on the people of South Sudan? Should sun stop to rise and instead keep setting? And the third question, the last from Victory Mamakur, Abraham Awolich, I have came and believe missing out some of the insightful regarding situation in our country. However, what have you incited as intellectual solution for addressing all the matter issues you have been expressed? Those are the three questions.
Thank you. Well, the question of Rose, what are the smart solutions that our people need to make? To become a country, you are basically asking people to come together. Tribes, ethnic communities, religious group, all of them coming together to form a union. So when a country is threatened, the only thing that you can do is to go back to that. Call the people and reestablish a lost union. That is what we are asking for. That is the smartest thing to do. If there are many people in the Equatoria who feel that they have been marginalized and their livelihood has been threatened, if there are people in Baragaza, people in Upper Nile, who no longer feel that they are part of the country and that they are victims of those who are in power, the smartest thing to do is to go back. Go back to the basis, call your people and say, we are sorry, we studied wrong, but we want to correct this. What can we do together to reestablish a stronger unity of our people? That is what we are calling the round table. I think that is the only smartest thing to do. We need to stop scheming for power. We need to stop looking for power to be shared. We need to stop trying to defeat each other. There is no end. You could never defeat the will of people, never. So we really need to go back to the unity of the people of South Sudan through the genuine dialogue that will lead to a new constitution and new elections, and establish a new government that can be controlled by citizens. That is what we are proposing. And you can get more of that in our letter. Number two, the person saying is PCCA giving up. No, we are not giving up on the people of South Sudan. We are simply trying to be realistic. We know that citizens are challenged. They are afraid. We have called them to come out and protest. They were suppressed by the government. The government deployed the army, and people were terrorized. And so people are fearful. So they didn't come out to protest. And we will continue to call them. But if they are afraid and they are fearful, we don't blame them because they are being suppressed. And so we are saying, in light of that, that is the power that we had as a PCCA. We are a non-violent organization, and our power relies on the will of people to come together to challenge the state. We will continue to advocate for that. But we have now known that we have limitation. If we cannot mobilize people enough to rise up and to challenge the state, then we have to look for other alternatives for achieving the same goal. And one of the alternatives is to go for dialogue among the people of South Sudan, not the PCCA. PCCA is not asking for dialogue with the government. We have no basis for doing that. But we are calling for the dialogue among the people of South Sudan as a whole, whether in opposition, whether with the government, so that we can reestablish our state that has been divided now. So we are not giving up on the citizens. When I say that the sun is setting, we are simply saying that the situation is not improving. If you are sitting there thinking that the peace agreement is being implemented and that the economy will start growing and that money will start coming and that democracy will start being reestablished, we are saying there is no sun rising in those aspects. In the state, the sun is setting. It is becoming darker and darker and darker, which means there is no hope in the current political configuration in South Sudan, unless we do something. And the thing that we want to do, if you read our letter, we have proposed 5 different steps that we need to take to correct this situation. And so we are not giving up, and we are not saying there is no hope for South Sudan. We are saying there can only be hope if we do things differently. But if we continue to do things the way we are getting deeper and deeper into the darkness. So that is what I was saying. The last question was, can you repeat the last question? I'm sorry.
The last question is coming from, he said that it's mostly addressing the matter of the issues of express. He's asking about regarding having assignment or solution.
Okay. Yes.
The issues.
So, what are the alternative solutions to this?
Yeah.
So we think that there are 4 different things that we need to work on as a country. So a country is established and it stands on 3 to 4 pillars. Pillar number 1 is the unity of the people. So for you to have a country, you must have people. That is what we call a nation. Right now, our people are not united. We are divided. Political leaders are divided. Military is divided. Civilians are divided. So therefore, we are no longer a nation. We need to come back together. And we call that social cohesion. We need to reestablish the cohesion of people so that people are doing one thing. For you to be a team, to be a group, you must work together. So we need to reestablish our social cohesion. The only way to establish social cohesion is through negotiation. We need to go back to the table, and it is not a political negotiation. It's not a peace talk. Peace talk is not good enough. It is a real dialogue. That's why we have called for the round table. So that is one. The second pillar is the security. The reason we want to come together is so that we can protect each other collectively. I don't think anybody in South Sudan feel that they are being protected right now. We are each other's enemies. We are killing each other. So we have lost control of our collective security. So to reestablish that means that we really need to look at our army, how it is configured, and make it, repurpose it, make it reoriented, make it an army that protects and given us guarantees to all of us, not an army that some of us fear, but some of us celebrate. We have lost that. We have lost a sense of collective security. We need to go back to that. And that can be negotiated through the army. And it is to be negotiated politically and socially. It is not a military thing. It is a political thing. It is a social thing. So that also requires dialogue. The third pillar is economy. The reason we come together as a people is so that we can create an environment in which we can all thrive economically. And we have seen the benefit of that in 2011, 2012, 2010. Our economy was growing. We had a lot of money. People were living cheap and life was improving. Now we have lost that. The economy is collapsed. We have no jobs. The value of our currency is gone. And the reason these things happen is because of war, because of political uncertainty, the failure of political leadership, and of course, corruption. So we need to reconstitute our economy, and we need to repurchase our credibility to manage money, and we need to recreate state institutions that will be good stewards of our natural and financial resources. Now, lastly, once you have reconstituted these things, you now have to create a governance framework, because what brought the collapse of all these things is because we have failed to govern. We have failed to live up to the systems and institutions that we have created through our constitution. We have failed to respect the constitution. So we need to come up with a new governance framework that will now strengthen and consolidate these three elements. And I need to reiterate again, the three elements are social cohesion. Our people must cohere and work together and feel like citizens. Nobody feels less. That is one pillar. Second pillar is a collective security. We have to feel secure under the arms of our government together. And number three, we have to feel that our unity is giving us financial and economic benefits collectively, not just a few. And if we have agreed on those three, then you need to create a governance framework that will protect this. And it has to be a democratic governance framework that gives us equal opportunity. So I think that is the way out of this crisis. And you can achieve this through the Roundtable Conference and through dialogue. A negotiated peace settlement is not enough. So that is what I can say, and that is what we are proposing.
Thank you, and I appreciate you for answer those. Actually, I have a lot of good questions coming in from our viewers, Clubhouse and Facebook. Actually, I don't want to let this this question from Abraham go. He asking you, did the government in Juba call you guys, PCCA members, like any other opposition, come to Juba, or do they ignore you guys?
Well, first of all, PCCA is in Juba. Like I said, Governor Kwela Aguro-Kwel, who is a leader of the PCCA, is in Juba. He was arrested, detained for 17 months without charges. The court found that the PCCA has not committed any crime and that they were exercising their constitutional right. So he's there in Juba. If the government wants to talk to the PCCA and wants to have dialogue, Governor Kweli is there, is readily available to have any exchange of views with the government. And we are here in response to that. It is important for the citizens of South Sudan to understand the PCCA. The PCCA is not a political party seeking political power. We are a non-violent pro-democracy civil rights movement advocating for democracy and protection of rights and the Constitution of South Sudan. That is what we stand for. And so we are not in the business of negotiating and making peace with the government and being given some political power. We are not interested in that. We are interested in legitimate, honest, and transformative change. And we will continue to advocate for that. If the government wants to talk to us, we are willing to talk, provided that we are talking about transformative change. Anything else, we are not party to it. And so that is what I can say. We have not gotten any call from the government to talk or to have any settlement, but we are aware of the fact that, of course, the government is afraid of the PCCA. They are nervous of it. They know that we have the capacity to mobilize and to create a lot of trouble for them. And so that is why they continue to constrain and frustrate and make the life of Kwila Gurikwil a living hell in Juba. Thank you very much. That's what I can say about that question.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Awolich. Appreciate for coming in. I will give you your last remark before I close down the show. So you can give us your last remark. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Abraham Medit and the members of Lake State Media. I thank you very much for the opportunity to avail myself to the citizens of South Sudan and to engage with them, update them about what we are doing. The PCCA is well and alive. We remain united. We are not broken up. We remain committed to our vision, which is a vision of citizen empowerment, the constitution of democracy in South Sudan, and of course, calling on President Kiir, Dr. Riek Machar, and others to quit power and to accept responsibility for the failure of South Sudan and to seek not just live in disarray, but to organize a genuine political dialogue and a genuine roundtable conference that bring the people of South Sudan together. That is the only way out. If they don't do this, what will happen in the long run is that they will be humiliated, they will be deposed, and the country will be worse off. So they should do the right thing while they still have power right now by organizing a peaceful transfer of power, and so that they can continue to be honored as citizens of South Sudan. To the citizens of South Sudan, when we came out publicly on the 10th anniversary of South Sudan independence, the objective of the PCCA was and is to ensure that the next decade, the next 10 years of South Sudan independence do not go the same way the first 10 years have gone. We are now 3 years into the second decade of South Sudan independence. We have 7 years to go. And the thing that we feared at that time is what is happening right now. Our fear was that if we leave things to continue to go this way, we could lose the country. The country could completely collapse. Now it is collapsing, and the economy is collapsing. Even politics is no longer interesting in South Sudan. People are giving up even on politics because it doesn't have value, doesn't have meaning. There is no respect in being an MP in South Sudan right now. There is no respect in being a general in South Sudan right now. there is no respect and honor in being a South Sudan minister right now, because the government has lost legitimacy and respect among the citizens of South Sudan, and even in the eyes of the rest of the world. It doesn't have to be like this. We can be better than this. But we can only be better than this if we give up the idea that we can only build one person who will then save the rest of the country. It doesn't work that way. The country doesn't develop simply because of one person. Leadership is important, of course. That is why we select leaders. But if a leader has failed and has proven time and again that they are unwilling to change, or they have no capacity to change, it is time for us to act. And so we warn you, if you want to be free, your freedom is in your hands. The freedom will never be decreed by President Kir Mayadit that, oh, everybody is free today. No. Your freedom is in your hand. You must guard it jealously. You must fight for it to keep it. It is so expensive. We lost, on average, we lost 1.5 million in the first civil war from 1955 to 1972. And we lost 2.5 million in the recent war. So if you put all of those together, you are talking about 4 million South Sudanese lost to purchase our freedom. And you guys are giving it up for a loaf of bread. It is shameful. There is no country in the world that has fought so gallantly the way we did. And we simply give up our freedom, just the way we have done now. So I think that I'm appealing to you as citizens of South Sudan. Don't think of us who talk as the people who are causing trouble. If everything is going well in South Sudan, even if we talk day and night, 24 hours, it will not change the reality on the ground in South Sudan. The reason things are continuing to go bad is because they are bad. And that is why we are speaking, so that you can rise up, understand it, and know that your leaders have failed you. And if you continue to worship them, don't complain. You continue to worship them, you continue to think that they are the only thing. Unless they are there, there is no future. Of course, your future is going down the drain with them. And so we want you to listen to us carefully. We don't have a problem if you disagree with us, but we must talk. This country is going down, and it will continue to go down unless we act as a citizen. And the PCCA will be here on side by side with you. We will continue to speak the truth. We will not be quiet until the goal of restoring democracy and citizens' power is achieved in South Sudan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Awolich, for coming to Lake State Media. I would like to say on behalf of Lake State Media team, we are so happy to have you, to host you today. And also would like to shout out to our viewers in Facebook and Clubhouse and YouTube for always follow us in Lake State Media to see what are topic that we bring our media platform. Lake State Media is open to everybody. We come to bring people, let us discuss our issues in the country, concern our country, concern our life, and all kinds of social life and everything. So I would like to thank you, Awolich, for coming in. We will see you next time. And also
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good happy Memorial Day. It's a holiday today. Happy Memorial
Thank you very much. And I want to thank the listeners of the people of South Sudan, wherever they are. And let us keep up the hope, and God bless all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night.
Penyara, Bibor, Ping Ping William, Ato in Juba, Malatori, hey, yo, Ping Ping William, Ato in Benti, Walla Quaju, hey, wow, Ping Ping William, Ato in Malkal, Walla Pinyaram, Ping Ping William.